I think if you are collaborative, have these strong relationships, it will be so much easier to solve challenges. I mean,
Yeah.
if I had to boil it down to like
Yeah.
one talking point, that's it. You can solve problems more efficiently, more effectively if you feel aligned.
I mean, I'm always interested, Sarah, into how you got into where you are today. How did you get into ops? And are there really interesting precursors that you can see led you there, even if at the time it didn't seem like that was the direction you were going in?
Yeah, well, I think that's so it's so astute, Tom, because um I looking back on my career, I graduated from college almost 15 years ago, and looking back, it just makes perfect sense that I would have found my way to RevOps to where I am today. But of course, at the time I had no idea, just
Mm.
no idea at all. I was just figuring out what interested me and what opportunities were there and learning and growing all the time. But here I am. So I totally agree with you. And my path to get here was first and foremost a love of math and data and numbers. So
Mm.
undergraduate degree was in math. I just always loved data, details, black and white, proving things. I love that. Then I got my master's in secondary education. So with the thinking that I love to teach people, I love to inspire people, I love to share my knowledge with others. When I did my student teaching, I did not love it. I realized I wasn't a classroom teacher. As much as I loved teaching, I loved more of the mentoring or one-to-one small group aspect and less of a classroom teacher. That was not going to be my path. I finished my master's degree and did not know what to do. Had no idea. I had this math degree and master's degree. What was I going to do? So I ended up landing a job in fundraising. There was just really no rhyme or reason to that. I just ended up in fundraising and met a lot of great people. This is at Stanford University, huge institution, huge fundraising machine. I was in corporate and foundation relations. Again, like that part was just totally random. I just needed a job, needed to pay the bills, needed to learn and grow, didn't want to be a teacher. What do I do? But what I ended up really latching onto and gravitating towards was looking in hindsight, everything operational. So my role in this fundraising org of Stanford was just wearing lots of hats, just everything. Like it was like event planning and management, office management, data management, just like wearing all these just hats, fresh out of college. Like, yes, let me do this, this, this. But what I loved out of all these different pillars was the operational stuff, the data management. So making sure that Stanford's CRM, as it was clean and accurate, and that we could pull reports and get accurate insights from that data. What are the policies and processes around this data and around how our fundraisers, which in hindsight, it's funny because fundraisers are like nonprofit sales, right? Their job is to go to people or companies and say, hey, would you like to give us some money? It's just same as sales. Oh, Tom, are you there? Tom, are you there? Can you hear me? Froze.
Yes, I'm back. I'm really sorry. You were saying that you were in fundraising and what you realized you love was all the process, the data, making sure the CRM was up to date, and that's what you're all about. And past then, you started to slow down, but I'm back online.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was at one point you were very still, and I was like, he's a little too still. Okay, so yeah.
Really good listener.
Yeah. But anyway, you know you're a great listener because you did recap what I was saying. And so right, fundraising policy process. And after about 3 years there, I realized I was like getting the itch to, I mean, if you know anything about Silicon Valley, like almost everyone there ends up getting bitten by the tech bug. It's just some way, shape, or form. Like you just have to get into tech. So I was like, fundraising has been great. Stanford has been lovely, but I want to work at a tech company. And I just applied to lots of places and even lots of roles. They were always operational roles, but they were even in like recruiting and even like sales. Like I really didn't know, but I knew that I loved this operational component. And then when I saw this role at Box, which at the time was a tiny startup, it was in sales operations. And I didn't know what sales operations was. My role at Stanford was not called that at all. But in reading the job description, I thought, oh, it's policy, it's process, it's data, it's strategies, all these things that I love. I'm going to go for it. I got the job. And I mean, really, the rest is history. That brings me to how I ended up in sales ops, rev ops. Now, if it's helpful for you, I can talk about my path from there to here. But I want to make sure that's the spirit of your question, or rather, the spirit of your question is how did I end up in the path of sales ops?
No, I'm really interested in this actually. Definitely talk to me how you went from sales ops to rev ops. And I'm also interested in distilling like where you think the main differences are between those two roles, especially, you know, this is great for people looking at making that transition themselves.
Absolutely. Okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't just like
Yeah.
rambling.
No, no, no. I love it.
Yeah. um, right. So sales ops at Box. It was tiny. It was the Wild West. There was just no policy, no process, no standardization. The data was just total craziness. And I just thrived. I thought this is the coolest thing ever. I get to look at their CRM and realize it's just such a mess. How do I clean it up? Because if we clean it up, then we can start to make sense of it, because people around Box were like, what are all these metrics? Where do we stand with XYZ metrics? And the business just didn't know, because the data was just all over the place. So I got to work. I got our Salesforce instance into shape. I started to implement processes. So, okay, these people are allowed to fill out these types of fields, and these are the pick list values, which will give us better insights and things like that. And then policies on things like order management. I mean, when do we need an order? When we don't? All of those things, I just really just got to work. I mean, long story short, Box ended up being this incredible success story. I'm so thankful to have been a part of it. Sales ops grew. I was promoted to management. I got to build a team of sales ops people. Ended up moving to London for a year to build up our EMEA presence, which was absolutely fantastic. I would do it again in a heartbeat. But we were always sales ops. At Box, it was always sales ops. Now, after I departed after 5 years, I realized I missed being at a small company. Yeah. Love Box, but it was my time, yeah. Wanted to really build again. Yeah. After my time was up, the company did end up building more of a RevOps org, but I didn't experience that when I was there. So fast forward to my time at Guru, which I ended up landing an opportunity there just through the Philadelphia Tech Network. I live in Philadelphia now. It's, well, kind of a long story. I moved around London, Philly, South Africa, Philly, like that was a whole thing. But then ended up back in Philly. And through my network, I ended up connected with the CEO of Guru. And when he got to the point where they raised their A round and started to grow, he asked if I wanted to join. And I said, absolutely. So even at that time, I joined as sales ops. I did not join as RevOps. I quite honestly didn't even think about it. I mean, as a team of one, the company was 25 employees. Team of one, I was just doing it all. I was doing all the policy, process, data, tools, strategy for the sales team, but then very quickly ended up taking under my wing marketing projects. So campaign operationalization, HubSpot, our marketing automation tool is HubSpot. So taking care of HubSpot, figuring out the strategy there, operationalizing campaigns, and then also on the other end of the spectrum, helping the CSMs, our customer success managers, be more effective at their jobs. So very quickly, even though I was hired as sales ops, my role just organically expanded to this entire funnel. And after about a year of that, when Guru thankfully grew very fast, we grew in terms of revenue, in terms of employees. I was able to start hiring people on my team. I realized, you know what? I should make a case for rebranding to RevOps. Like that's what I'm doing. And as I hire people, that is what I am doing. My definition of RevOps, this is one question you asked me. My definition is marketing ops, sales ops, customer success ops, and that can be CSM, support, implementations, all of that together, all of the policies, processes, tools, data, strategies for all of those things. And it's not to say I've like built an empire and no one else outside of myself or my team can work on those things. Of course not. If anything, it's the exact opposite, where we're this central hub where we just make sure, all the trains are running on time. We make sure no one's stepping on each other's toes. We make sure that if, the marketing team wants to spin up this type of initiative, it's not going to have a negative impact on comp plans or around our net retention. What if this marketing campaign ends up like hurting our expansion potential? I mean, like all those things, we really sit in the center of that and make sure that everything is smooth, or as smooth as can be. There's still always chaos. It's not perfect.
Yeah, and actually chaos, that's a really good segue into what I'm really passionate to ask you about here, because, like if I'm a RevOps person, or if I'm getting into RevOps, what key fundamental factors do I need to be aware of if I'm considering either joining a larger company with a larger RevOps team and a much smaller one? You've hinted into this, and if you hinted you're doing more building, there is more chaos. That chaos can be really enjoyable. But how does it affect the role?
Well, I mean, the two roles are probably going to be completely different if you're at a small startup versus a large company. I mean, yeah, as you said, you quoted from me, like it's when you're small, a lot of it is about building from complete scratch. So if you're someone who's wanting to get into RevOps, but you're not sure if you belong in a small company or a large company, I think that's the spirit of your question, right? It's like, how do I know? I love policy, process, strategy, systems, tools. I love that. Do I belong in a small company or a big company? I think it mostly boils down to building versus improving, you say, or building versus iterating. Yeah. And again, it's not to say that there isn't both of that in both segments. There will be things to build at a large company. You could be on this tiger team that's like, we want to, create a new product. Hey, RevOps, can you build this product into our price catalog? Or, oh, we're going to have this brand new tool. Can you build out how this tool would fit into here? There's going to be building in a large company. There's going to be certainly iterating in a small company. We iterate on our decisions all the time. I feel like the company has morphed into a new company several times because it's a different company when you're 25 employees, 50, 100, 150. They're certainly iterating, but it's just the majority of your time will be spent on building new things from complete scratch. And you either need to be comfortable coming with that knowledge already, something you've done in the past. And it can even be, say you're just getting into RevOps, you're just out of university. I mean, you can draw back on internship experiences, even like student group experiences. That's fine. The skills are very transferable in RevOps. Or you need to be very comfortable being like hungry and scrappy and learning how to build those things.
Yeah.
Tom, you mentioned there aren't too many ways for those of us in RevOps to learn. And that's certainly true. Certainly true. Not a lot is formalized. You can't get a university degree in it. There aren't too many training opportunities. But it doesn't mean that knowledge doesn't exist. Yeah. There are communities. Modern Sales Pros is one example. Revenue Collective is another example. There are, Lean Data runs this like mini conference called Ops Stars every year, and it's all about RevOps. There's so much knowledge out there. You just have to be very hungry. Find it yourself.
Yeah. That's interesting. Now you talk a lot about building there, and that being a really crucial aspect of smaller companies. Now, when I speak to revenue ops people, what they're building all of the time is relationships, and that's something you particularly wanted to focus on today. So for someone who doesn't know your business or what you've been doing recently, can you paint the picture for me, paint the landscape? What do I need to understand for us to progress further into a conversation about building relationships and also the interplay of that and reps adopting new processes, which is the other theme.
Sure. Yeah, I picked those two things because I am very passionate about it. I think that those, everyone has a job to do. Everyone works hard, but if you just enter your day and your week with this sense of levity and ease and collaboration,
Yeah.
everyone's just going to have a better time. I mean, who wants to go to their job, whether it's in an office or remote, and it's just a slog because you don't like the people, you don't know the people, you have this friction. I mean, who wants to do that? It's going to end in burnout. I mean, there's the stat out there that says the average tenure at a startup is 2 years. And I fully get that. I mean, so many startups are just this like tension and slog. So it's been very important to me in my career journey to find opportunities where the people are friendly, approachable, work hard. I mean, I want to work with smart people who are very passionate, but they have this sense of unity. And it's not, I mean, it works both ways. If I walked into a place and everyone else was very kind and I was a jerk, then that also wouldn't work out well. So I think that my role as the head of revenue operations is to build and maintain these very strong relationships with all of my stakeholders. And as I mentioned before, I really see ourselves as this hub between honestly every single group, from product design engineering to that's, we call that the PDE org. Then there's the revenue team of sales, marketing, customer experience. And then even the internal operations org of people ops, finance, all of those things. So I mean, that's my like high level vision and philosophy. And would you like to hear about my strategies and tactics as well, or?
It's definitely come on to that, but I just wanted to refocus on this. I find what you say really genuinely fascinating because, if you were to define the task of a revenue ops person, traditionally you might say essentially they're driving revenue in their business, they're driving predictability, they're finding out about runway. But your approach is different, and it's interesting because it's so much about the people. It's a philosophical one, it's a cultural piece. And I just want to know, why is that so important to you? Like you said, it's good, it's important to be happy at work, you don't want people to burn out, but like, why is this an important factor in achieving the ultimate goal of more revenue, and why is that important to you as a human being anyway?
Sure. Well, I think if you are collaborative, have these strong relationships, it will be so much easier to solve challenges. I mean, if I had to boil it down to like one talking point, that's it. You can solve problems more efficiently, more effectively if you feel aligned with these people. That's it. I mean, if you go in, you're like, I'm RevOps, and here's the data, and here's what I think, here's how we should book revenue, and then whatever stakeholder, it doesn't matter who, sales, marketing, customer, whatever, says, I don't agree with you, here's my stance, and we're just fighting about it, well, it's not productive. It's simply not productive.
And this is great, Sarah, because when people like yourself who are so great at aligning teams, and it's so much in their ethos and in their role, it seems obvious, the argument seems obvious as to why that be the case. But nonetheless, it's common to have misalignment. It's common to have tension, marketing, sales is a typical example. Why are we still seeing this in the tech space and in ops and in sales and in marketing, etc.?
Sure. And I think a lot of it, if I could boil it down to one word, it would be transparency. And a question about why, I don't know why. I don't know why there's not more transparency. I don't know if that boils down to culture, and some teams, or some companies rather, have this culture of silos and this culture of egos, where everyone is kind of in it for themselves. Even if they say they're team players, they have their worldview, and they don't want to break out of the bubble, and they don't want to have this transparency to have other teams see their data and vice versa. Perhaps it's just a culture thing. Maybe I'm very spoiled that I've just been in places with transparency. So there's that culture, certainly. Perhaps it boils down to your stance on knowledge sharing. I mean, I don't, I don't know what your policy is on like touting your own product, but I mean, Guru is a knowledge management solution and Box was
Yeah.
content management, right? So
Yeah.
we always had this culture of like content and knowledge is
Mm,
paramount. So
mm,
maybe I'm just extremely spoiled.
mm,
But we sell to companies and we're like, having knowledge visible to your entire team means you resolve problems quicker, you avoid problems that could come
mm.
down the pike because everyone can see the same thing. You're speaking the same language.
Yeah.
um, Perhaps that's a big part of it is and maybe again that just goes back to culture. You have to have this culture. We tend to say a knowledge centric culture.
Mm,
Again, maybe it's because we're Guru and we're knowledge management, but we really think that that's paramount. We think if everyone has access to the information they need to do their job, they're happier, they're
mm.
more collaborative, and problems get resolved faster, or they're just eliminated, they don't exist.
Yeah.
And then, you could go into your question about why there's this misalignment. If it's not ego and it's not culture, perhaps it's when there isn't a true RevOps team that can
Yeah.
see the big picture, when there isn't that buy-in from the leadership team of RevOps. I don't hate to use the word own. Own sounds so territorial. RevOps oversees or maintains, or some sort of softer word, maintains the core data sources, ensures they are clean, and provides readouts of the data. And we can certainly meet with stakeholders and talk about if there's any discrepancy.
Mm,
Again, that goes back to a culture of being collaborative. Like
mm.
if we present a piece of data and someone says, I don't think that's right, let's just talk about it.
Yeah. 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 Really fantastic. Now, you mentioned something there, which is getting senior management buy-in. This is something you said you've done successfully because you pitched for a RevOps team. And this goes on to your strategy piece. So how do we create an alignment? And I really want to start here with that senior management piece as well.
Sure. Well, strategy wise, I pretty early on set up recurring meetings with each head of a business unit.
Yeah.
That was very important to me. And I never want to over meeting anyone.
Yeah.
But I did think it was very important for me to get to know each department leader, get to know them, build a relationship. And then if we had this regular cadence, maybe this is not shocking because I'm an operational person, but I love this concept of recurring meetings. Like for our vendors, for instance, I always insist on a QBR, this quarterly cadence where we just check in. What's going well? What could be improved? What are we missing? What are either of our blind spots?
Yeah.
That's really it. I mean, that's the QBR, but that's also pretty much the same agenda for myself and each of the department leaders on whatever cadence. For some business leaders, it's a quarterly basis. For some, it's monthly, and for some, it's biweekly, and for some, it's even weekly. And I've been at Guru for 3 years, so I've just kind of iterated myself on what the right cadence is for each department leader. But the fact remains, the strategy is recurring meetings with a simple agenda of what's going well, what could be improved, what are our blind spots, and then if there's time, we talk about the tactical, like what are your asks?
Yeah.
What would you love for RevOps to be working on? Let's prioritize those together because we can't do everything.
Yeah.
That's been honestly the hugest part of my strategy, as well as to document everything and make it transparent. So I already mentioned we use Guru, of course,
Yeah.
but I don't want this to be a Guru infomercial. So because honestly, I can't imagine living without Guru. But,
Yeah.
but also Asana
Yeah.
to track any project. So for me, I always, when I talk with all the stakeholders, I gather what they would love for us to be doing, and then I take it back to my team, and we prioritize based on impact to the business, whether that's cost savings, revenue generation, and then we put it in Asana in this board of like, here are our focus areas. I call them our North Star goals. I'm not going to put every single little project there, but here is our list of North Star goals for the quarter. For instance, this quarter, it's all about removing friction, as it kind of is every quarter. But still, this was like, we're not going to release anything new. Earlier this year, we had a new quoting tool, a new compensation tool, a new go-to-market strategy,
Mm,
a
mm,
new product. We had all these new things. This
mm,
quarter is just remove friction.
mm.
So 3 components we're working on: removing friction in generating pipeline, removing friction in purchasing Guru, and removing friction in net retention. So that can either be in increasing expansion or decreasing contraction and churn.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you asked originally about senior leadership. I mean, that's it. It goes back to building relationships and this regular cadence, open communication, and transparency, having everything documented after the meeting. Like, okay, we talked about this. Here's what we decided. Here's the action items. I cannot overemphasize how important it is to document and keep things transparent.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's fantastic. Now let's take that transparency piece and flip this round, not from senior management, but onto sales reps. And that was obviously the other part of our question here is how do we get sales reps to adopt new processes? How do we get the reps and the people on the floor, whether that be, you know, in marketing, sales reps, customer service, how do we get these guys to align and feel like a cohesive unit? And how do we get them to adopt processes that are obviously strategically implemented to drive cohesion as well?
Sure. Such a great question because, I mean, we do throw a lot of change at reps,
Yeah.
and we do throw a lot of requirements at reps. I get that. It is a lot, and I can understand, I can empathize with them. Maybe I'm starting to go into my tactics without realizing it, but like having empathy, like first and foremost, putting myself in the shoes of the whole revenue team,
Yeah.
sales, CSMs, support team, putting myself in their shoes and understanding what their life is like, what are their challenges, what are their roles and responsibilities is very important before I even put forward a message. That's some sort of change in policy, process, strategy, tool, right?
Mm,
First, get in their
mm,
shoes, figure out what's going on with them.
mm.
And then second of all, from there, I start to think about the why. So in order for anyone to adopt a new anything, I think it's very important to communicate the why. Why are we doing this? Why? Because surely they're going to ask that of themselves.
Yeah.
There's a new process. Oh, you have to, there's a new field and it's required for every single opportunity. Well,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
Why? And it's a great thought exercise because if I can't answer the why, then
Yeah.
we shouldn't be doing it, right?
Yeah.
Not only does it help their adoption and buy-in of this new process or policy or whatever, but it also keeps me honest and keeps my team honest with why we're doing it. If there's not a good why, let's not do it.
Yeah.
And then from there, you know, we just document and communicate. Change management is something that is so often overlooked because everyone's so busy.
Yeah.
And I think everyone's guilty of this, not just RevOps, but certainly we're guilty of it as well as everyone else. It's so tempting to just say, did a project, we launched it, let's move on. But that's really only half of it. You know, if you don't figure out, be intentional about your change management strategy,
Yeah.
it's you're just not going to get that buy-in. So,
Yeah.
you know, I will go through, well, what's the change management strategy? What channels are we going to use to communicate it? Is it through Slack? Is it through email? Is it through Guru? I mean, it's always documented in Guru, but is that the primary way we communicate it? We have this bi-weekly newsletter where it's all sorts of stuff happening. I mean, do we do a Slack blast? Do we only put things in the newsletter? Do we talk to sales management first, who then cascades it down? Being intentional about your change management strategy is absolutely paramount when it comes to getting buy-in from a sales team.
Yeah. Okay. And that's great. So, you know, as part of the strategy, I'd imagine measuring success must fit somewhere into this. And that's kind of my question. When is it appropriate to start measuring success with a new strategy?
Sure. I mean, from the get-go. Yeah, I mean, that almost goes without saying that taking snapshots, first of all, for any sort of change, let's just go with a very tactical, simple thing of there's a new field on an opportunity and it's required. You figure out, you the empathy thing, the why thing. What is the problem you're trying to solve by implementing this new field? Is the problem we're trying to solve, we want to increase, I don't know, our email reply rate, or we want to increase our conversion rate from, say, a free guru team to paid.
Yeah.
Got to take a snapshot beforehand. You should have a goal and a hypothesis in mind, and then just start to track it. I mean, it's like, that is like, I'm glad you brought it up, because it was so obvious to me that I didn't even say it. You should absolutely be measuring success. And kind of going back to building relationships and getting buy-in from the reps, and back to my whole spiel about transparency, share it out. If it's a failed experiment, if it did not move the needle at all in a quarter, share it out and say, we made a mistake, or, we're going to focus resources elsewhere. We're going to, hey, this initiative wasn't a great success, but we're going to give it another 6 months. Or, hey, this wasn't a big success, and we realize it slows you down so much that we're just going to pivot to something else, and you don't have to do this anymore. Being accountable to those results is extremely important too. That's another huge lever in building relationships and creating a respectful relationship between all of your stakeholders, the sales reps, leadership, everyone.
Yeah, I think that's so awesome. I just love the way you dissect things into each of its components and just give like a really fundamentally like just truism kind of as to why it should be the case. It's great. Now, one of the questions I always like to ask to close is, if you were in a room full of RevOps leaders and sales ops leaders, like the best in the world, like the people you'd really want to be one day, what questions would you ask?
Ooh, that's great. That's great. I'm so glad you asked that, because it's so flattering to hear you say that I'm like, sharing wisdom. I love that. But I also have so much more to learn and grow myself.
Yeah.
I really do. I'm learning and growing every day.
Yeah.
What would I ask, like, the best in class RevOps leaders? I guess well, two things come to mind. One is how to build a predictable growth engine.
Yeah.
Because we how do I say it? I guess it's just one of my blind spots. I am RevOps. We run the gamut from tippy top of funnel, people who are completely unaware of us, all the way through to they're a customer and they're expanding, or they're leaving and they're becoming advocates of Guru at other companies. But I would say my personal blind spot tends to be the very tippy top of funnel.
Yeah. Right.
It's something that I just want to fill in order to be more well-rounded. I don't want to sell myself short. I have seen a lot, but I would love to learn from people who have scaled top of funnel from tiny, 1,000 eyeballs on a website to like 1 million eyeballs on a website in a month. How do you do that? I don't know the answer. I would love to learn. And then did you say something?
No, not at all. I was humming in agreement.
And then the other thing that I always think about is how to scale the team without scaling bodies.
Right.
So another way to say it is how to do more with less.
Yeah.
But, we're all about operations, we're all about efficiency, but there's still always so many more things that are being asked of us than we could ever do. And I think I have a pretty good footing on how to prioritize. I mentioned to you this framework. It's a very informal framework. It could be formal if I wanted, but what's the revenue impact? What's the cost savings? What's the number of hours? What's the level of, complexity to complete it? I'm pretty well versed in that for decision making, but I still would always want more tips and tricks on just how to be more efficient and impactful with my team's time overall. I mean, I'm no longer just me, myself, and RevOps. I'm a pretty big team now, and everyone's wonderful, and they have their roles and responsibilities. But I just would ask these like best of class RevOps leaders, just how do we execute even more strategically and impactfully as a team.
Yeah, I mean, that's always it, isn't it? I mean, so many people in RevOps feel like they don't quite have all the bodies they need on the ground to do all of the work that's expected of them, and it's a lot, and lots of this work is really manual, and it's incredibly time intensive. You know, when you're looking at cleaning data, producing reports, it's not easy, and it's something lots of people struggle with. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I think it's a question lots of people would like to see answered, so that's absolutely awesome. One final question is, I mean, I actually think you've already answered this, and you said it's about filling the top of the funnel. But what I was going to ask is, you know, all of us in our lives have personal and professional changes, improvements they still want to make. They have hills they still want to conquer. I was wondering with you, Sarah, if it's not the same as you've already said, what would be your personal and professional hills you want to conquer in revenue ops?
Sure. Yeah, I think the growth side would be it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think it's good to be more well-rounded. You know, a couple years ago, it would have been I would have said to you, oh, I want to get better at telling the narrative of how my team maps to our company OKRs.
yeah,
Because I think that that's also a common theme. It's funny. You've clearly done all your homework. You've clearly like talked to a lot of people because you're really knowing these things. I mean, yes, we always feel like there's like way too much to do and not enough time, not enough bodies. But another like truism of RevOps. Oh, I just lost my train of thought. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, I just lost it. Oh yes, I'm sorry, brain freeze. Another truism of RevOps is often feel like we're a cost center, not a revenue generator, because revenue generator,
yeah,
because we don't, in the strictest sense of the word, we don't generate revenue, right? We're not closing deals.
yeah,
But talk to any RevOps leader, I'm sure this is a common theme. Like we really feel like if you have a strong RevOps team, it's just gonna lead to more revenue.
yeah,
It's so obvious.
yeah,
But it is hard sometimes to paint that picture and tell that narrative and get buy-in from your company. But I think I've done a good job here at Guru of painting that picture.
yeah,
Again, clearly I'm struggling with it because I still want to try to do more with less. But
yeah,
I think that I've gotten a lot better with mapping our story and our mission to the company OKRs, our highest level goals. How do we fit in?
yeah,
So I've kind of like conquered that one. I'm proud of it. The next one is just this top of funnel. How do we
yeah,
create these feedback loops, these growth models? It's just a blind spot for me.
yeah,
It's, you know, in a way, it's not a core part of the RevOps team's job.
yeah,
We don't tend to get involved with spinning up actual marketing programs.
yeah,
We rather our role is to operationalize them. You know,
yeah,
marketing team, we want to do this. We are like, okay, here's how we're going to do it. Here's how we're going to get it launched, and then
yeah,
also measure the data afterwards. But for me, Sarah, I just always found that to be part of the business I just don't know a lot about. I'd like
yeah.
to learn.